Welcome. My name is Cindy Gay. I'm a rug hooking artist and teacher, and my mission is to help rug hookers all over to find their own style. And I do that through online courses, classes like this, and online courses that are a little bit more formal and more structured over at howtorughook.com. My main website, cindygayrughooking.com, has over 300 articles about rug hooking, and you should be able to find most of what you're looking for simply by going to the bottom of the page, grabbing that search box, and typing in what you're looking for. So let's get started. Either you want to start rug hooking or you want to help a friend start rug hooking. And it's easy to think, okay, here's what you need. You need a floor stand. You need a Townsend cutter. You need a Hartman hook. You need all this expensive equipment, but you really don't. There are some basics that you need. And what I'm going to show you today is how you can start rug hooking. Where's this one? How you can start rug hooking with just this stuff. Yep, that's what we're going to do. We are going to start rug hooking with just that. Okay, so let's get started and let me show you how. So I'm going to switch over to the other camera, which is a camera here on my frame. And I have a little piece here that I hooked at the hooking. I think it was the hook-in. I think I hooked this on Saturday. And this is just an all red, but I hooked it with the idea that it's an illustration that it's red and it's orange and it's a little bit of a weird green and some brown, but it looks red, but it gives it life because it's more than just red. Okay. But I'm going to use that as one of my samples for how to do a finish. And so since I had the backing, I thought I'd show you this. Now, this is a way to use a backing that's too small to fit on your frame. I just took two of the pieces and I stitched them together to do this. And now I can start hooking. This particular piece has a little bit of a flaw. I don't worry about that too much. In fact, if this was in the middle of my rug, I would still hook it. I wouldn't cut this. I would find a way to maybe put a stitch into that to hold it down so it doesn't move and stick up through the loops. But the loops would cover it and it's not going to fall apart unless I start cutting things. So I'm just going to leave that there, or I could try to find the other end of the thread and pull it to get rid of this little snag. But since I'm going to be hooking over here and then that's going to be cut off eventually anyways, it really doesn't matter. So one of the things that you absolutely cannot do without is a backing. I prefer rug warp. I've made no qualms about that. I've loved rug warp since the day it was introduced to me in August of 2000. This happens to be a bit of the tighter rug warp, so it's a little harder to pull up large loops, but it's not impossible. This is a piece from my room size rug because I cut off one side of my room size rug and I'm starting the binding on that. So that's where this came from. So your rug warp is going to look a little bit different. The holes are going to be a little bit bigger. But one of the things that you need is going to be a pattern, right? So here's my pattern, okay? That's what I used to do that little square up there. So I'm just going to put my pencil in the ditch and draw a line. And then decide that I want it. It didn't stay in there. There we go. And you can kind of tell when it jumps out. You can hear it. Okay, so this is definitely easier on the table. I should have shown you how to do this on the table instead of on the frame, but you can do it that way. So now we have our backing, we have a pattern, and what do we need next? We need a hook. Okay, so when you don't have a regular rug hooking hook, this is a crochet hook. I put a link to this exact hook on Amazon in the show notes below this video. And it's a size B slash, oh man, I can't see that. B/1, and then it says dash 2.25 millimeters. Okay, so it's basically a size B hook. The problem with this is that this is not very good to hang on to, right? It doesn't feel good in your hand. So what I like is a hook that looks more like this, and it's got a nice big handle to it. Well, we've got the beginnings of it, right, with this part. All I need to do is to take a hacksaw or somehow break off part of this shank of this rug hook so it's not quite so long, and then have a woodworker make a wooden handle, right? Or if you don't have a woodworker, what you do is you go and you buy a couple of packages of polymer clay, and you just wrap that clay around the handle, and you can kind of like test fit it and see what feels good in your hand. And you can make it as big or as small as you want, and you can make it in your exact favorite color, right? Now, one thing I like about a hook, see, make sure you can see this flat area on here. That flat area is lined up with the hook part of the hook. So here's where it's flat, and then there's the business end of the hook where it hooks up. So what I like about this kind of a hook, is I don't have to feel for the end to know how to hold it. Because if I hold it this way, I'm not going to be able to pull up loops, right? I need to hold it this way. And by having that little bit of a flat area there, I will always know exactly where my hand needs to go. Now, if you're making one out of polymer clay, you just figure out where your thumb goes and smush that area flat, and you're good. If you already have a hook and it doesn't have a flat area, you could just sit there in front of the TV with a piece of sandpaper and your thumb and work on it. Okay, you don't need a fancy woodworking person. If you've got one, hey, great. But if you don't, that's how you get around it. So let's say this is what we have to hook with. And the next thing we need is to cut our wool. Okay, so we have our wool, but how do we cut it? I'm going to come over here. I'm going to change the camera again. And I showed this the other day. There's a couple really simple ways. We put too much stress and thought into what it takes to cut the wool. Sure, you can get a Townsend cutter. I shouldn't say that. I should say Townsend style cutter, right? The brand names are now Beeline or Alt, A-U-L-T. Either one of those, they're perfectly fine. The Alt's going to be slightly cheaper. The Alt blades fit in the Beeline, and the Beeline fit in the Alt, and the old Townsend fit in both. Okay, so they're all plug and play. They all work. So there's two ways that you can cut. You can literally just fold it like this, grab a big old pair of scissors, and start cutting. Perfectly acceptable. There's many rug hookers who do that way. The other thing that you can do is you can come over about an inch. When you're brand new, I'm going to recommend slightly less than an inch, and then just rip it. Okay. We know this is perfectly straight, right? Because it was ripped. It was on the straight of grain. Then what you do with nice little short-bladed scissors, these are my favorite. If you don't have these, you can find these, right? These are what, $1, $2 at the most, right? These don't cost much. These are a little bit more. These could run up to $15. The link that I put below, I noticed today it's on sale a little bit. It's a little bit cheaper. It might be $12. But I love these. These are super sharp, and you have to be very careful because if you were to get skin caught in between those blades, it will cut them. Then take this little piece that you ripped off and simply hold it like this. I've got it in between two fingers this way, and I'm holding onto it this way, and I'm simply cutting up. Once I have that all the way through, I can come back to each one of these and now cut those in half. These are perfectly acceptable. They're going to be a little bit wonky, which actually I think adds to the homemade quality of your rug. It doesn't take anything away. And if you can't afford the rug cutter, don't let this stop you. Okay? Let's go back to the frame. Okay. So we've got the little pieces that I've just cut. Oops, wrong camera. Okay. I got the little pieces that I cut from that piece of wool. And you're going to hold it underneath. I tend to hold it like this, and then I'll scoop up underneath. You're always going to want to stay slightly inside the line. So I'm over at least one thread from the line. If you hook on the line, half of your loop is going to go this way, the other half is going to go that way. You're 50% wrong all the time. So go inside a row or even two and pull it up. Now this is not an easy hook to hang onto. If you were to hold it like this, like a pencil, I tried it. I tried pulling a couple of loops this way, and I felt so much stress in my fingers that I immediately knew this was not the right way to go. Okay, so I'm going to hold it like this, the same way I would hold it if it had a great big giant handle. And I am going to use the same techniques that I would use, and I would go in and then I almost like rock it out sideways and then pull it down. And it's the same kind of thing. And I'm doing this with just a crochet hook. Something that you probably have on hand doing nothing, right? So you might be thinking, okay, well, that's fine and dandy because you've got a frame. Yeah, I've got a frame. And I wanted to show it to you that way because it's the easiest way for me to get it on camera. But if you don't have a frame, let's do it this way, okay? I'm taking a simple little frame that I took the glass out of. In fact, it held my college diploma. I don't think I need that anymore. So I took that out and took out the glass, took out everything that, that was there. And now I can take this backing okay, I can take this backing and lay it over the frame. And then these big old bull clips, okay, you can get these at Walmart, you can get them at any stationery store. I like the more the better, but I found 8 of them, 2 on each side was like the minimum that I wanted, mainly because I want to be able to pull it nice and tight. So I got one side attached, and then I'm going to work on this side, and I'm going to pull it tight. And the only thing you'll have to be sure of is that you can squeeze the pull clips big enough to get them on the frame. I also find that if I put these down, they're not like in my way quite as much, but they do take up some of the workspace. But I would rather have them down and out of my way than have more workspace. And then I'm just going to continue on this side. And then once I get that one done, I'm going to pull this side nice and tight. And I didn't have another one of those. This is the same thing. It's just a fancy one because it looks like an old one. I don't think it holds quite as tight, but quite frankly, I couldn't find another one in the house. So, okay. And I've got a table that I'm sitting at. That's another thing that I recommend. Let me get rid of, oh, it's on all of them. Hold on, let me see if I can figure, my eyes are not looking real good at that. There we go. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to prop it against the table. I'm actually going to lower this chair. I never remember which button I'm. There we go. Lower this chair so it's at a more normal space. And I can then lean this up against the table. What also helps is if you put something that's heavy right here, heavy and fluid, so it kind of conforms. And a tip I learned from some Canadians is that they will make a bean bag out of pennies. Okay? Pennies because they're heavier than what beans or anything else would be, right? So they'll just make a fabric sack or get a Ziploc bag, fill it full of pennies, and then lay the whole thing over the edge of the frame. And it kind of holds it down for you. But you don't have to do that, and you can get used to it without. You're going to take your strip, and you're going to go underneath. You're going to take your hook, and you're going to poke it in a little bit on the inside of the line where you're going, right? And then it's just a matter of keep that business end in line with your thumb, okay? And then push it in, scoop it up, pull it out sideways. Push it in, pull it up sideways. It's a little harder because this does not stay put quite as much, but it does work. And you can get an acceptable run of loops that way. Now, the reason I didn't show you a hoop, an embroidery hoop or a quilting hoop, several reasons why I didn't. They tend to break because we tend to crank them down really tight, particularly when there's hooking on this side, but no hooking on this side. You've got one tension adjustment, and in order to get it tight enough so this stays put, you got to really squeeze it over here, and that tends to break the hoops. The other thing is I couldn't find mine, so I couldn't show it as an example. But this frame idea works really good. The other thing that you can do is instead of using these bull clips, is that you can take the frame and you can wrap it with fabric. And I hooked with a lady who had been hooking for 20 years when I met her, and then we hooked together for another 20 years. And that's pretty much what she hooked on every day, all the time. And it was a frame like this. It had some legs and it had a base. So that was the only thing that was different about it than just a regular picture frame. The picture frame part of it was wrapped with many thick layers of a thin fabric. They looked like a ripped up cotton sheet. So just a leftover sheet, just kind of strips of that all the way around. Then what Pat did is she simply pinned with T-pins the backing to that fabric. And she would just pull it to the side and pin it. Now, you couldn't do it super tight because that fabric's only twisted on there and that would tend to twist off. So you have to be comfortable with it being slightly loose. That's why I love my Puritan frame, which they aren't making anymore, but you can find them secondhand. I love it because I can get it drum tight, and I get it drum tight super, super easy without doing a whole lot of work. Let me see if, oh, and then there is a link. Where did I put those? Of course, it's not going to be easy to find. Okay, I have to get better at organizing that so I can find them again later. But underneath here, I'll have a link for the crochet hook and a link for my handy scissors, but most of you probably already have these already, right? Because I've talked about them so much. Okay, now how can you get a piece of backing? I am selling these little pieces of backing, and it's new. It's in my rug warp item, and you would just pick out beginner, I think it's called beginner piece, and it's going to be a piece that's at least 14 by 14, usually closer to 18. It's zigzagged on all four sides, and it's all set, ready to go. In addition to that, you could buy strips of wool, meaning not cut strips, but strips of wool that are, like this was before it was cut. Okay. And they're about 3 inches wide, and they're this long. So they're nice and long. And you'll need a minimum of 2 to hook a 6 by 6 inch square, which makes a great coaster. But you're going to want to have multiple colors in there, right? So I would recommend getting, 6, 8 of those so that you have multiple colors. And let me grab one of those. I had that bin out. And I put it away because it's part of my finishing stuff, and I knew I wasn't talking about finishing. But here's one of the little samplers, and this was just done with scraps. So if you are a rug hooker who is helping a newbie get started, to hook a 6 inch by 6 inch square like that, they need 2.5 ounces of cut wool, and that'll give them enough to do a 6 by 6 inch square like this. This is every cut size possible, all over the place, and just a bunch of colors. And if you want to, when you are ordering your strips, you can tell me, I'm ordering 8 strips. I just want a bundle, and I want it to be mostly red. Okay. And then let me pick out what I think you can use to make a really pretty red coaster, or you want it mostly green, or whatever. Now, if you tell me you want it mostly green, you might get a piece of blue, you might get a piece of gold. You're going to get something that's not quite right, because that keeps it interesting. Okay. But if you want full control over that, we can do a video chat. We just need to do it very quickly, okay? Because I can't spend a whole lot of time on that. Okay, so Sonia says, she goes, I think Amelia may be asking if you ship to Brazil. No, I don't. I haven't figured that out. And holy cow, shipping to Canada is a major issue. So I don't. You'll have to find a local resource. I know there is rug cooking in Brazil because there's been articles in different places about that. Can you show us your frame? I can. Let me see, let me unplug at least that one on the camera. This is the Puritan frame, and it's attached for camera purposes to an IKEA rolly cart. Mainly because when I move this, I want the camera to move with it. Okay. Because I've had it before where it didn't, and I would sit down, pull it close to me, and I pulled the frame, or the rug cooking frame, out of the camera frame. And so it's like, ugh. Andrea is saying, my husband is making me a Chetticat style frame. Have you used one? No, I haven't. I've seen them being used. I've touched one when someone was using it. It doesn't pull it tight enough for me. I like it drum tight. But if you're one of those people, you don't mind it being a little bit loose, that's okay. I also like to hook a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here. You really can't do that with the Chetty Camp. If you're doing a really large rug, you got to hook that area and then roll it up and then hook the next area. I can just pick mine up. My room size rug has been hooked on a frame this size, just like that one. Nancy says, I have 2 Puritan frames. Love, love, love. Yeah, they're workhorses. They're not fancy. They are not the latest technology, but they are pretty impressive. A lot of people say they don't like them because the grippers wear out. I've never had one where they wore out. Not the grippers. I've had the fabric that hold the grippers wear out on the frame that I'm using for my room size rug because there was so much pressure on it that imagine taking cardboard and bending it constantly over and over and over, and pretty soon it turns almost into fabric. And what would happen is that they wouldn't stay in the channel anymore, and I had to get new ones. If there's nothing wrong with your gripper strips, do not replace them. The new ones I don't think are as nice as the old ones. So keep the old ones in there unless there's a definite reason why you need to do that. The only time I've seen a Puritan frame that would not work, that was broken, was when the gripper strips were put in backwards. Okay, so you always want to think like petting a kitty. So from the inside out, it's soft, but going the other way, it is rough and almost sticky. Okay. Okay, so that might be an issue. Helene says, I have trouble with the sides that turns, meaning it doesn't stay turned. Someone might have forced it the other way and broken the mechanism, unfortunately. But as long as you only turn it in one direction and you never try to turn it the other way, it works perfectly fine. Pat is saying, would you use an alt cutter cartridge with beeline cutter with no warranty issues? I don't know. I'm not the one who's issuing the warranty. You would have to talk to the other the companies that be to find out about that. I can tell you that if there's a problem with a cutter head and there's a problem with it in an alt cutter, there's a problem with that same cutter head in a Townsend and in a beeline. It's the cutter head that has a problem. Lana says, it must be drum tight for me too, much easier. I use a Quilter's Wonder Hoop and stand. Best purchase I've spent. I don't have a problem with getting it tight on an 18-inch hoop. She has needle nose pliers. Okay. Yeah, and part of it is going to depend on how big you do. If your hooking is smaller than the hoop, you're golden. It's going to work. It's when you get loops on one side but not on the other that it doesn't hold it tight. Can you show how to take our piece off the frame? It's really not that big of a deal if you use rug warp. Okay, another reason why I like rug warp. What I find is a lot of people who have loops pulling out is they're not using a backing that is suitable for the cut size that they're using. And that's why they're pulling their loops out. My gripper strips never pull my loops out, ever. Ugh. That's why I wouldn't like this, because it takes too long. It takes too long to move it. So let's do this. Let's put this right on the gripper strips right here, right? And you just kind of pull it. And with the Puritan, there's a knob here that you turn that tightens it this way, and a knob here that you turn that tightens it this way. Now, I've made it extremely tight, probably tighter than I would if I was hooking. And here's what's going on there. Now, what I would do is if I have places that are not hooked, I would lift those sides first, okay? And of course, you're going to get stuff like this because I tend to be a dangler. I tend to leave strands pulling out or hanging down. Let's get rid of those. But that would never, even if you're using a loosey-goose backing, that would never pull them out, right? But the other way, tight and tight, is to simply pull on it and make it even tighter and lift up at the same time. Pull and lift. And then you can take it off with no problem. It's just a matter of getting into a habit of doing it that particular way, and then you'll do it without even thinking, and you'll never lose a loop to the frame. Olivia says, my very first frame was using carpet tack strips. Oh, on a square frame. Was a good start, but you might have some scars here, huh? Got a hexagonal 360-degree rotate and tilt. I know Olivia is in Ireland. In the US, that would be a Needleworks frame. The Needleworks brand frame is very similar to probably what she is talking about. It might even be the one she has. Who knows? And another love for the Puritan frame. Chris says, I'm curious about your room size rug. Can you talk about how you decided to do such a large rug? Its history. Thank you, from Ontario. Well, I can do you one better, Chris. On my website, CindyGayRugCooking.com. And unfortunately, I think I've made it hard for you to find all of a sudden. But if you go to the bottom and you do room size rug and look for the one that says day 1, you can follow along with me as I'm hooking it from day 1 to the very end, or where it's at now, because it's not done yet. It's still on the other side of the table. How I did the design, why I did the design, what changes I made. Is this working? I don't know. And then what I decided on it, the controversy over the little circles and the hit and miss, how some people thought I was ruining the design by putting that on there. It just happens to be my favorite part of the rug. But yeah, you can look for that. So what I'll try to do is, today's Tuesday, so this will live on YouTube. I will try to put an easier link in the show notes. I'll do that right after we sign off. And Paulette just says thank you. So what have I missed? What other questions do you have? And I buried my notes. One thing that is on the horizon is my test of doing a virtual workshop. As you know, most rug cooking workshops in the near future have been canceled. And I'm afraid that's going to be a continuing trend. And even if it's not, you might be the kind of person like me who can't travel as much as you used to. I need to stay a little closer to home. And in order to do that, I'm doing more online training for things that I need to learn. So I think it would benefit you guys. When we have a workshop, we have the first day, there's a meet and greet with the teacher, and everybody shares their project, and then the teacher goes around and works with each person individually. Well, when I'm teaching a workshop, instead of working individually with each person, I do it in the center of the room, and I welcome the entire class to watch. So I'm going to be doing the same thing online, right? We'll pick one person, we'll get started with them, and whatever their project is, I'll meet them where they are, and we will start planning this rug. Once they've got enough planned that they can go and work on it, we'll go to the next person, and we'll go all the way around. I have no idea how long that's going to take in an online environment. Then what we'll do is we'll meet on a regular basis. How often? I don't know yet. I am going to design the frequency of the lessons, the day and the time of the lessons with the people who agree to come in and do this test run with me. Now, how do you become part of the test run? Well, what you do is you send me an email and tell me you're interested. Then I'm going to send everybody a Zoom link, and we're going to meet. And then, because that's how we're going to meet for these workshops, so you'll know that the technology will work for you, right? And if you have problems with it, I'll help you get started with that. No worries. And it can work on any device. If you can get to the internet, if you can watch this, you can do the Zoom thing, okay? We'll get you set up on that. And then we will huddle together all the people who've put their hand up and said, I'm interested. And we'll pick a date and time. Now, we're going to pick the day and the time that's going to work for the majority. Unfortunately, it's not going to work for everybody. So not everybody who puts their hand up is going to probably follow through and pay the fee and become part of the workshop. So I'm going to collect a little bit more than what we need. I need at least 5 people. Okay. The workshop is going to be $250. I don't know how many times we're going to meet. We are going to meet until we get this figured out. We're not going to go crazy. We're not meeting for a full year. Okay, that kind of a thing. But I guarantee you, you will get full value for this. You will get as much from that as you will from a $400 workshop, a 4-day, $400 workshop. Okay. The good news is, the class size is going to be much smaller. So you're going to get lots more attention from me. So it's going to make that process a little bit easier. So again, if you're interested and you're ready to take a chance on this and get some one-on-one attention, this is not training like this. This is, Carol, show me what you're working on. What wool do you have to go with that? Do you have a darker green? It's going to be that kind of a thing, just as it would be when we are in a workshop. Okay. But I don't know how it's going to work. So this is a trial. Once that trial works out, then I'll roll it out and I'll make a lot more spaces available for a lot more people. Norma says, how is your Deanne Fitzpatrick piece coming along? Well, I put it away and I've been, during the hook-ins, I've been hooking on my room size rug. So right now, that's sort of what's stoking my fire. So that's what I'm working on there. Heather says, how do I see the show notes? Okay, so generally, if you're on a computer, it's right below. If you're on a mobile device, next to the title, there's going to be a little tiny drop-down arrow that points down. And you would click on that, and what'll happen is the chat will go away and the show notes will show up. And that's how you see the show notes on a mobile device. Britt says, do you leave your piece on the frame or take it off when not hooking? I'm not obsessive about that. It usually stays on. But I'm not using monk's cloth, which is going to stretch from here to kingdom come. So I don't have to worry about stretching it out of shape. I'm using rug warp, which is a pretty solid backing. I've never really had any issues. It's usually on the frame, even my great big giant rug. What type of workshop do you take as a student? I take, I have to choose from what's being offered, for one thing. And it's hard to choose because the camp that I go to the most is Sauter Village. And you sign up it used to be like November, I think. Was it November? And then they moved it to January. But the class doesn't start until August. So what I'm interested in February might not be the same thing that I'm interested in August. So that's an issue. I'm usually looking for a teacher I haven't had before, or someone that I had a particularly good experience with before. I'll take again. That's one thing I don't do, and it's never been we will never talk about this thing with my friends, but I don't confer with my friends to find out what they're taking. Okay? I'm okay if I'm in a classroom by myself because I'm going to be making new friends, right? If I am by myself. If one of my friends happens to be in that class, hey, that's fun. But I'll see them at lunch. I'll see them at dinner. I can drag my frame over to the next room and hook with them in the evening. So it's not an issue. So I do try to focus on what do I want rather than what are my friends taking. I don't like, this is one of my personal pet peeves, I don't like kitty classes, meaning everybody hooks the same pattern. I'm not interested. Or someone hooks a Chatsky, like we're going to do a purse, or we're going to do, even though I've taught a class on how to do purses, we're going to hook a bowl, we're going to hook whatever. And I've taken the class on pins, so I guess I do take some of those classes. But I prefer a rug class, that kind of thing. Again, it's like pretty much, it depends on what's being offered. So Debbie says, I purchased a Puritan frame and I have a question about it. On the two sides that turn to tighten down the backing, there is a screw. Is the screw supposed to be attached to the metal on the side? Okay. Let me get rid of, I can get rid of that quickly. Let me unplug it over here. Yeah, I'm not using that camera, right? Spin this around. So yeah, I'm assuming you mean this little, there's like a little screw detail there. Let me see if, okay, so that's about as close as I can get into it. There is there's a spring here, and it comes down and it wraps around that screw. So yeah, that screw, that's, there's a screw down here that holds this piece. That's for structural support. And then there's a screw right here, and that hangs on to the spring. And that needs to be there for that spring to work. So she says that's the place. So Deborah says, she goes, you can sometimes fix by replacing with a longer screw that just bites into the inside of the opposite side of the tube. Yeah, because there's probably nothing in there. And these little covers that, of course, right now I cannot get off. These little covers are available at Home Depot. They're like, I used to say 30 cents, but I think they're more than that now. They might be 50 cents. Okay, so this screw, yeah, I can't see what that screw is, if there's anything there on the inside attaching it. Probably not. So you could probably do what mine is the screw. The screw is not touching the spring. So the spring needs to come down and wrap around. Oh wait, do I have another one of these? No, not there. My other ones are upstairs. But it comes down. Let me draw that for you. Okay, so here's the screw. And there's a bunch of it up here, and it comes down, it goes around. So it comes down like this. So this is the screw. And then the wire from that spring that's wrapped around this post comes down and goes around. So hopefully that'll help you. If not, send me an email and I will shoot you a closer photograph and send it back to you that way. Okay. So Deborah is saying sometimes the turning side won't stay tight. So Helene, this is your, it's kind of sounds like maybe the same solution. She says sometimes it won't stay tight because the screw hole in the metal side has been worn too large, and it's probably just in there flapping around, where if you do a longer one and have it go through the other side, that would, yeah, that makes sense to me. Okay. So Elizabeth says, what is your Puritan frame attached to? Is it a roller cart? It's from IKEA, of course. Yeah, I'm going Thursday. Even though we can't go and shop, we're going to shop online and get our order all taken care of and then pick it up because they're doing that and then go to Olga's. So yeah, normally this has 3 shelves in it, and a lot of people have taken these carts and turn them into rug hooking carts by putting their cutter on this, and then you can put your wool in and all that other kind of stuff. I needed to attach the camera, and that was the biggest thing, was to get this camera attached. So we've made no changes to the cart. I mean, I can turn this back into a cart if I can find the 3rd shelf that I've stuck somewhere. I'm not sure. I think it's over there somewhere. And the only other thing we did is because this shelf right here normally gets anchored into this little cross beam. There's nothing there to sort of hold it in place. So my husband cut a dowel rod that is the length there, and we just zip tied it there. So this shelf here is just sitting on those dowel rods, and that's what's holding it up. But it actually works surprisingly well because you could adjust this height to whatever height you want. Yeah, I mean it's not bad. I mean, it's better than holding the frame on your lap, in my opinion. I like a floor frame. Linda says the solder classes must fill up fast. I wanted to take your class this year, but it was full at the first of the year. Linda, they told me that it filled up within minutes. They release it at 10 a.m. and boom, you have to be in and registered. There's kind of an art to getting registered. But this year is so unusual. So if it holds in August, which we don't know yet, they're going to make that decision in early June. Put your name on a wait list, okay? I know several people who have already canceled. I also know that the next person on the wait list has not been contacted yet, okay? Because they're waiting to be sure that the event is going to hold. Once they're sure the event's going to hold, that process will kick in. Get your name on a waiting list. There's going to be more cancellations this year than normal, mainly because we're all old ladies, right? And we're all in that danger zone. And a lot of people are going to decide either right now or later that this isn't going to be for them. They're not comfortable with it, and they're going to cancel. So if there was ever a year to get in at, after the registration's been full, this is the year. This is the year. Marty says, have you ever heard of wrapping gripper strip around a hoop? No. At least these kinds, I don't think it would work. They're way too stiff to do that. But maybe there's different kinds. I don't know. Deb says, thanks. I think I know how to fix it now. Also, do you still sell the floor stand? I don't. They're out of stock right now. I have to get my son here to build me some more. I haven't even talked to him about them yet because of all this stuff going on. He is being incredibly protective. He's being very careful himself, and he works in Brooklyn. So he says, I ain't coming anywhere near you guys until I am sure that he doesn't want to bring it home. So It's going to be a while until I see him. But when I do, then I can talk to him about doing them. He can get them up and running pretty darn quick. It's just a matter of me ordering the rest of the parts. Deb says, make sure the side is in proper position before attaching the spring. That's a good tip. Does your shoulder get sore at that height? No, because, well, first off, I don't usually hook on this. This is just for camera demos, which I'm not using it for very long. And I usually adjust my chair to the height. I make sure everything is comfortable. I mean, I'm sitting with my shoulders down and my arms out like this, and I am hooking like this. Okay. I also like to have my frame at, if I have a choice, I want it at about a 45-degree angle, where this is not quite 45 degrees, right? It's much flatter. If I were working on this for any length of time, I would find a way to put a wedge in there so that this came up more this way. Then it's more like an artist easel. The one thing you don't want is you don't want this when you're rug hooking. If your chin is close to your chest, bad news. That's going to put a lot of stress on your neck, and that's going to give you problems with your headache. You want to be sitting up normally and then just sort of looking down, and you should not have to tilt your head at all. Work with the arrangement. Try to figure out what you need to do. Raise your chair, lower your chair, figure out what it is. That's why I like an office style chair. The arms don't bother me. I do it with an arm because I usually kind of perch on the edge of it like I am now. But I like that because I can change the height in a minute's notice. Marisi says, I have trouble getting comfortable when I hook. I haven't figured out height. Don't like lap. Yeah, the problem with hooking on your lap, let me see if I can't get completely, well, yeah, I can. So when you're hooking on your lap, what I do, because my lap is slanted down, right? I end up doing this. Now we've got a whole nother issue. So you can get a footstool and do that. But now your legs are high, so now you have to sit back in the chair and then bring your feet up. It's just easier to have a floor stand and then a chair that you sit on. For years and years, I used a card table chair, just one of those fold-out chairs. And that's all I used. I don't use a recliner. I don't, mainly because I guess I'm fidgety. When I'm hooking, it's like, oh, I need something to drink. I want to be able to jump up and get what I don't want to have to unpack my whole lap and then get all resituated again. When I started, there was no such thing as cell phones, right? So when the phone would ring, if you were all in your nest, you either have to have a phone right there or you have to unload everything. And I just find that a lot of muscles in my back and stuff fire when I'm hooking in a soft recliner type chair. But that's me. If that works for you, knock yourself out. But it's when you're not comfortable or after hooking for an hour or two, you're in pain, something's wrong. And we need to figure that out. Jerry says she hooks in the lamp in a recliner. So comfy, hard at meetings, of course. Yep, whatever works. Pat says, I just moved the levers on my Puritan frame for the first time, and I cannot get them back. No, don't push them. Don't push them. You're right. You cannot get them back. That's how it works, okay? It only goes one way. So when it gets too far, and you're like, okay, I need to get it back. No, you just keep turning it all the way around and get it set up the other way. Okay? They only turn in one direction. Okay? That's when something goes wrong, is when someone forces it and tries to turn them back the other way. They should have a big label at the bottom of that, but they don't. It'll turn easily in one way. That's the only direction it goes. And you just have to, like, when they get too far and they're not sticking anymore, it's like, okay, take the rug off, reset, and then put it back on. And then you're good for a couple more movements. Usually about 3, I think. And then you have to take it off, reset it, and put it back down. Marisi says, yeah, I need a stand or a lower table. I'm also getting, I am so getting everything you are saying. Good. Yeah, and Deborah's encouraging you to keep going in a clockwise rotation. One way only. David says, here's a tip to pass on. If you have any bent teeth in your frame, use an empty mechanical pencil to insert over the bent wire tooth and straighten. Oh, David, I'm doing a screenshot. You guys y'all know how to do screenshots? When you see something really good, do a screenshot. That's a good one. Thanks, David. That one is, yeah, it's particularly if one is too straight and you need to bend it again. That would do it. That would give you the leverage that you need to do that. Yay! And we got a little thank you going on. Pat is thanking Deborah. Deborah says they did have a warning rotation label, but it was made from strange plastic that got sticky and disintegrated. Well, I bought mine new. Oh, it does say it on there. Shoot. It's the label right here. There is a label on it. It says warning, turn handle clockwise only. So there is a label. Helps if you read them. Oh, no. Oh, that's funny. Oh, shoot. Okay, I'm embarrassed. Yeah, I haven't looked at that in years. You know how you just stop seeing things? I stopped seeing that. So, yeah, there is a warning there. Oh, that's funny. Okay, so that's it for today. If you're not a member of the Rug Cooking Journey and you want to see replays from lessons just like that, including last Friday's, then what you need to do is to join the Rug Cooking Journey. It's a monthly membership. You can pay for a month at a time, 6 months, or a year. What I recommend is if you're unsure, sign up for a month. And then once you're logged in and you're on your account, there's an option to upgrade it to yearly. It'll apply the unused portion of your membership and give you a discount on the year. And that's going to be where you save the most money. So I hope you all are, joining me for that. And Maurice says, well, you put your rug over it. And Sharon, yes, thank you for the reminder. I'm not showing wool today. I didn't have time to pull some, but I'm trying to do a pre-shoot. I'm going to try to do that. I think pre-shoot it and put it up there. So, but I got to work out the routine. I just haven't figured that out. But join me over in the Rug Cooking Journey because those wool videos will be posted there first. Then they'll go on YouTube or Facebook. I haven't quite decided exactly what platform I'm going to put those videos on. But that'll be videos showing you various wools that I have in stock. And I'm going to showcase, half a dozen or so every week so that you can kind of get a feel. And then I'll be capturing images of those and adding them to that inventory spreadsheet where you can order them on my website. So that's it for today. Thank you all for being here. I do appreciate it. And I hope to see you all next time. Remember, this next lesson, live lesson like this, will be Friday. But in the meantime, tomorrow we have the hook in. And if you want to join that, all you need is a Zoom app and that special link. You get the special link by registering, and you get the Zoom link by clicking on the link that you get when you register. Hint, that'll tell you exactly what app to download. It'll make that a whole lot easier. Just follow the instructions on the sheet. That's it, everybody. I'll see you all tomorrow at the hook in. Helene, I'll see you there. Thank you, guys. See you later.